Communications. We'll start right off with that. And Chris, I'm glad you're on board. You are muted, just as a heads up. Is there anything we need to know from you?
No, just we're going to be putting out our 319 RFP sometime in late in the year for early next year response, but that's about it. We're looking for big projects.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a question? Excuse me, Joe. Chris, can I ask you a question? How much money's in those 319s?
Well, we typically will fund projects up to 250. So we're looking for fewer bigger projects than we formerly did.
Well, what's the total amount you have in the bucket?
It's about $1 million, a little
Okay.
over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, did anybody hear from Eversource? John, did you hear anything? Okay. Department of
Joe,
Yep.
regarding Eversource,
We have letters into them, and why don't you explain that, Jeff?
Okay.
well, John and Pete co-signed a letter
I'm the chairman of the
to
Harbor
Eversource
Commission in Norwalk.
requesting
And this
a
meeting was the
status
mayor's
report on their
water
Norwalk Harbor project.
committee, which
and,
I put together all the people that are on it.
And
John,
inviting,
John, can you mute yourself? John, thank you.
yeah, so the letter was to request a status report for reasons that are obvious, and also the letter invited a representative of Eversource to attend the next commission meeting in September, and that if that's not convenient for Eversource, that the Harbor Commission and Shellfish Commission would try to schedule a special meeting just to discuss the status of the Eversource project.
But we have no clue what they have in mind at this point, right? Jeff?
Well, we can ask again at the Shellfish Commission meeting, but when we met, as you recall, with the DOT project team last week, we were told that DOT had nothing more to report on, knew nothing in addition to what we what we heard a year ago. So we haven't heard back. We haven't had a response from Eversource for over a year. So we offered them an opportunity to come to the commission meeting and have a discussion with us.
Excellent.
Or with the two commissions.
Department of Health. Tom, anything we need to know from you?
Only that the mayor has declared a water emergency starting on September 5th, continuing through October 31st.
Good.
Okay.
The activities include, prohibiting sprinkling, watering, irrigation, washing vehicles, filling or draining ponds or lakes. And the police officer advised failure to comply will be a fine of $90 per day for each day the violation exists.
Hey, Tom, has that been publicized yet?
Yes, the mayor
Okay,
came out with
good.
it yesterday.
Tom,
Great,
was it
thank you.
September 5th through October 31st? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
But haven't we experienced a lot of rains with these hurricane storms coming up? And I know I've been in a couple of torrential rainstorms, and the accumulation hasn't been there.
Now, District Water Company said there hasn't been appreciable enough. We had 3.58 inches of rain in July and 3.68 inches of rain in August. So only 6 inches the last 2 months.
11 inches since May.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. What you missed last month, but I'm including it just so you're part of the program and you understand some of the communication that has taken place. Nancy Chapman contacted me in regards to sewage in the Norwalk River. And basically, I sent you the message. It says, a Silvermine resident tells me the harbor was disgusting yesterday, sewage all over and all the way out to the mouth of the harbor, even though there's no rain. Was there a spill from a wastewater plant? If so, how many gallons spilled and why? And I sent out a bunch of emails to people, and so did Nancy Chapman, and the reply was basically nobody could find a legitimate reason why it was out there. But the
Yeah, they
general,
did.
they
It's
did,
spill from the
find out.
transfer, it's spill from the transfer station. I heard from Ralph Kolb last night.
Okay. But as of the time I put this together, the only other suspect was a possible dumping of the onboard tanks from a big boat. And, but it was from a transfer station.
Yep.
But if
That's
that's
the
the
last I
case,
heard.
Joe, if that's the case, how come can they reissue that finding, or are they just gonna forget about it?
I'm sorry?
I mean, Dick says that there was a clear evidence of what had happened. They're saying they don't know about it. Can you go back to them and say, hey, guys, we got some new information?
The
Well-
DEP was called in on it.
Yes. And so was the Coast Guard.
Where was the spill?
Transfer station.
It was at the transfer station.
But it
I went
impacted,
out there today. There was no traces left.
Oh, okay.
well, Dick, are you sure we're talking about the same event? Because
Yes.
this was back in the end of July.
That's a different event. This happened
Right.
last night.
Right. You're talking about something totally different.
Okay.
So we had another event.
Nobody knows where that one came from.
Correct. And the Coast Guard investigated it, and so did Kolb, as well as the Marine Police. So the only option was somebody was pumping from a boat. Or at least that was the thought there. But now Dick's telling us about another event, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the future. The other communication we had,
Hey, Joe, excuse me. But, you know, having said that, it was good that they were responsive to your question.
yes,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no question about it.
yeah.
And
Joe and Dick, how does this spill at the transfer station how did it get into the harbor?
You'll have to talk to Ralph Kolb. He had it all down. He told me last night.
But did it go through a
nothing
storm
about it.
drain? How does it?
Through a storm drain into some catch basin and then into the harbor.
Well, so there's a storm drain that it had to enter the harbor through a storm drain. Did they?
Hey,
What's
talking to
the
somebody
drain?
who has just heard this secondhand, and I don't know all the details. I can find them out for you.
And I know nothing about it.
But Ralph generally knows what's going on.
I'll make calls tomorrow, Jeff.
Hey, Joe, could this have been caused by equipment damage, equipment failure?
Could be a lot of reasons.
If so, it'll be
Don't
good to
know.
know. Has
Yeah.
it been repaired? If that's
Don't
the
know.
case. Okay.
Don't know. This last event that happened yesterday, I am not aware of it all.
Would we as a committee want to comment on the pending sewage right to know legislation? I mean, this is part of the problem in Connecticut is that when these leaks happen, we're not alerted. The public is not alerted.
That it would be a good thing.
Okay, I'll figure out how we can do that best.
Yep. And is it, you said it's pending, is it in committee or is it out of committee?
So that's what I got to update on. I know Bill Lucy's been working on it, and let me just I'll send everybody an email with an update on what we could do to support it.
I appreciate it. Thanks. John Romano and I have been getting emails from a Rick Reardon. And one of the more recent ones, this was back in early August, involved PCBs in Oyster Shell Park. And he claimed that it had the potential for leaching several thousands of gallons of PCBs into the river.
How did he measure that?
I have no idea. I have no idea. And I don't know how he got the information, except he was working for organizations or companies that were monitoring that. Long story short, I asked around and I sent an email to the mayor. I got no response. I sent an email to Nick Roberts, the head of the Parks and Rec, and I got no response. I did send an email to Kristen, Kristen with Aquapulse.
Rosia?
Yes. And she said, Joe, don't worry about it. We monitor that frequently, and we monitor not only the water, but the oyster meat for PCBs. And she said that specifically. And there's no evidence of it. And I did send it to Chris. I sent a copy of that to Chris, and then Chris, I think you forwarded it to another member of DEP, and I have not heard from him.
He claims to have files in it from DEEP with all kinds of background information and issues with it. And I think the properties where DiNardo and Fowler are, where Eversource is going through the middle of the property, and the DOT is going to use that property for some of its staging and stuff, is supposedly very contaminated too. He said that he himself and back in the day, John Frank used to go around investigating all these different sites, and they're the ones that came up with a lot of the issues and problems that are existing there, and they did it together.
That,
I think this guy called me a couple of years ago, and he said he had all these letters and internal stuff from the DEP. I asked him to bring them over and show me what he had, and never heard from him again.
well, it was ironic because when I got a hold of Kristen, Kristen DeRosa-Bannock, she said, Joe, we've been monitoring that for years, and there's no evidence. So they're very sensitive to that. And I think what we have to do is just, you know, I don't know if it was cleaned up. I don't know if it was completely removed. I don't know if there were barrels of it there. And he did not indicate that. If you would like copies of what he sent us, I'd be more than happy to share that with you.
I would.
Okay.
Joe, I thought that I had sent you a response that came from Dave McKeegan. I can read it to you. It says, Weed has not been involved with the site since 2010 with the development of a park on a closed site. I don't have access to the solid waste permit for this site, but I don't believe the city was required to conduct any long-term water quality monitoring. Based on the email string, it appears that Mr. Reardon may have obtained information from a preliminary assessment completed in 1989 by an EPA contractor. In 2008, the City of Norwalk's wastewater systems manager had the oversight of the landfill. I don't have any idea who the city has oversight responsibility now. If there is a potential leachate problem at the site, then the city should hire an environmental consulting firm to assess the situation and make recommendations to the city. So I thought I had sent that to you. I apologize if I didn't.
No.
But
Well,
it sounds like Kristen is already doing the monitoring in detail, so.
Jeff?
Well, I don't have the report with me to look at, but we know there are PCBs in the river sediments there. They were found in the Corps' sediment samples prior to the dredging project, Chris, in 2004. And then I forget the year, but there was a lengthy discussion having to do with remediation of the Oyster Bend Marina on the other side, if you remember. And that the applicant then, there were PCBs known to be in the river, and we had asked the applicant to do tests to see if the source of those PCBs, because there is a test to do this, was from that Oyster Bend site, which used to be a site to clean barrels years ago.
Right.
And if you remember that when the EPA requested that information from the applicant in order to review their remediation plan, the applicant went away. This was a voluntary remediation plan. So we never did determine if there was additional PCBs coming through from that site into the river. I have to go look at the Corps of Engineers sediment samples, but we analyzed those when we did the report on the Yankee Doodle Bridge. But we had never. Well, I remember the applicant at the Oyster Bend. Their argument at first was that the PCBs may have come from the old landfill. But that's just historical information. I don't have any knowledge of what may be taking place now.
Okay, well,
Joe,
Aren't there barrels buried in Oyster Bend?
Oh yeah, remember Tony DeAndrea had the old photographs of them.
Right.
The issue then was the applicant, to complete the condominium project, was proposing a whatever you want to call it, a cover or a cap on the property. And the Harbor Commission spent a lot of time arguing that they should also do something along the bulkhead, because we were concerned that there was leach out, coming into the harbor from the bulkhead, including leachate that may have introduced the PCBs into the river.
I think we
what
have
did they do,
documentation of that too.
What did they
What's
do?
that?
What did they do?
I think
They
there
didn't do
was
anything.
documentation.
They went away.
They
I
abandoned the whole project.
They
The
abandoned the
barrels didn't go
project.
away. The barrels are still there, right?
Yep.
Assuming they're buried underneath. Hey, Pete.
All right.
Remember that? You remember that project?
Yep.
do.
And we were talking about putting, John Frank was alive then. They were talking
Yeah.
about having them put one of them sealed bulkheads.
Right.
The interlocking steel, nothing could leak,
Yes.
and nothing came up.
They went away because it was going to be an added expense, and they weren't under an order to do anything. And Diane Lauricella had a big role in pushing that. But I'm not saying that that's the source of the problem. I'm just bringing up the historical, historical issue or
Yeah.
case study that we went through.
Well, that whole area was.
Yeah.
well, Jeff, the photo I think Tony had.
Yeah, you got it from you.
Photo that I took,
Yeah.
but it wasn't from Oyster Shell Park. It was on the other side of the river where they
Yeah.
recycled the oil drums.
That's
Right.
that's the site we're talking about, Oyster Bend Marina.
okay, yeah.
Okay,
That was a barrel cleaning operation
right.
many years ago.
Okay, Chris, can you forward that to me when you get the chance, please? Chris, you're muted.
You also got to remember the city dump was over there too. Who knows what's leaching out of that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, Pete.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I already did send it to you, Joe, and I just sent it to Jeff. I copied Jeff too.
Okay, appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay. Louise,
Yeah.
you wanted to tell us?
Oh, yeah,
about-
I did, just a couple seconds. I did actually just found the letter about the sewage right to know. I forwarded it to everybody. The legislation passed in 2012, but it's that DEEP is now, I mean, you probably know more maybe about this, Chris, than I do. DEEP is now updating, they're in the process of redesigning the electronic sewer bypass reporting system. So this is a request.
Well, dinner's made, so you can eat whenever.
So anyway,
Sorry.
I sent it. I think we would have
I
to
gotta
sign on quickly. So maybe everybody can look at that. I don't think we could wait a month. We'd have to do it now, but it seems pretty straightforward that it includes a right to know part of that update. So I sent that to everybody. And then I wanted to just let everybody know that the Norwalk River Watershed Association and the New Canaan Land Trust have petitioned the First Taxing District of Norwalk for a public hearing regarding their plans to raise the Groups Reservoir Dam in New Canaan. And the project, as it is now, includes also adding a 1,500-foot series of walls and berms along the edge of the reservoir, which is the Silver Mine River. And we'll include cutting down over 500 trees. And when we were looking at the maps that they sent us, that their engineers used, we saw a discrepancy. The maps on file at the Inland Wetlands Department in New Canaan show a wetland that goes from the land trust property there, that is the adjoining property to the reservoir, and drains by 2 streams into the river. And so those streams will be cut off by this wall, and they weren't part of the original application. So our position has been that the application is incomplete because that effects to that eastern bank by the wall and berm are not part of the application. So we're just petitioning. We're just going to have a public hearing, but we have hired some consultants to help us prepare statements about this, and we're hoping maybe for some changes. We're hoping there's an alternative to the destruction of that bank. So anyway, I just wanted to invite everybody to join that public hearing. It's September 29th at 3 p.m. And if you go to the DEEP calendar, you can get the link, or I will email it to you. So should I just email everybody the link here?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll email the link. And then I haven't done a formal public hearing before. I don't think the public can comment, but I think we'll hear the presentation, then we have a chance to comment in writing. Is that right, Chris? Do you know if that's right?
Chris, you're
Chris is
muted.
You're on
muted.
mute. You're on mute.
I can't answer that question, but I would say have some written comments ready.
In case. Yeah. Okay. That would be great. I'll send everybody a link, and if there are any important updates, I'll send that out to you beforehand. But it would be great to have a lot of people show up to hear more about that. And then this is just a quick sort of follow-up to the first thing we were talking about. I just had a long meeting with the second taxing district with Alan Huth. We're doing some awareness raising around the road salt contamination of drinking water. He said they're almost to the point where they're going to have to make a public health announcement about the amount of salt that has gotten into the drinking water, and we have to really look at this as a community. So for a future meeting, I wanted to talk about how we could help raise awareness around that. And he thinks that all of the towns in Southwest Connecticut should go to do what Aquarian has done in, I think, 6 towns now, that we should go to 2-day-a-week outdoor watering in the summer, that should be an ordinance. So I wanted to introduce for later meeting a discussion of maybe talking to the mayor about adding that. We have this, he has the right to declare the emergency, but after that, what we do in Norwalk to help deal with the drought emergency is not really spelled out in the way our drought response is set up. So just putting it out there for future discussion.
Louise, 2 quick questions. Do you know how high they're going to raise the reservoir?
So they're raising the dam 4 feet, and they're not raising the spillway. So just the part of the dam that the water is not meant to overtop is going to be raised 4 feet. And then the walls and berms are about, I'm not 100% about it, but they're only about 3 or 4 feet higher than the land is now. But it requires cutting all the trees and shrubs, which are just, I mean, it's a beautiful untouched riverbank. You know, the land trust has owned that land since the 60s. It's gorgeous.
Those trees will be underwater?
They'll be cut down because the addition of the berm, you know, then you get into the way the DEEP has regulations that they have to be mowed if there is a berm that's on a waterway. You know, I'm not good at the technical terminology here, but if they do put in a berm that's role is to hold water back, it'll have to be mowed. And the installation of the wall, it's like wall first, and then it's berm, and then it's wall, and it's berm. So it's 1,500 feet that'll all be cleared of vegetation. So there are alternatives to that in their plans, and it's our hope that with the closer scrutiny from DEEP and looking at the effects of this wetlands that weren't considered, that maybe one of those alternatives could emerge as a possibility.
Do you know if they're where they're transporting the soil from to raise the banks?
I don't know. I don't, there was nothing about that in the information that we saw.
And the last question I had is, when they do this, but they're not raising the spillway itself, how are they going to capture more water?
Yeah, so they're not applying for a permit to divert more water. They're not impounding more water, except obviously when there's a high water event until it goes down the spillway. So temporarily they are, but so they aren't impounding more water with this construction. They're restoring it's an old dam built in 1871, and it needs to be repointed. It's unsafe, so it needs to be restored. And they're also restoring, I mean, I could talk about this for too long, but they're also restoring the auxiliary spillway on the other side. And one of the alternatives is to just let more water go around the other side. Another alternative would be to let more water go down the river. But they have as one of their mandates to their engineers to not let any more water go down the river. So also all of the water, all the calculations for, the determining that they need to raise the dam to keep from overtopping and they need to add this wall were done. There aren't any gauges in the Silvermine River. So they use the Saugatuck Reservoir as a surrogate reservoir to do all their numbers. They looked at Factory Pond and Saugatuck, but if you look at groups, I mean, 1/10 of the mile up river from it is Milne Dam. I mean, it's the 4th of 4 dams owned by the taxing district. So that water, it's just not comparable to me to something like Saugatuck, which is huge and open. And so there are questions that we have. And hopefully the discussion at the public hearing will bring to light some of the answers to these things. I'm happy to talk to anybody if you want to contact me.
Thank you,
more
Louise.
about it.
Good job, Louise.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Louise?
Not to Louise. So did you petitioned for a public hearing
Yeah, because
when the notice came out? Is that how you did it? And then there used to be, as part of the hearing process, what they call the status conference.
we already had that.
How did and you did that, of course, remotely,
Yeah.
right?
This is the first time they've done any of this remotely, as far as I
Yeah.
know. I think it's the first time, but we did it remotely, and it was fun.
So the status conference that gave you the purpose of that is to see if you could resolve the request for the hearing without having the hearing, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and really what happened is we found that map discrepancy. So it meant that that has to be dealt with. So after the status conference now, I think dam safety and the applicant are working on figuring out about that map.
I'm just curious because they'll have to, the DEEP will have to run public hearings on many other topics now too. I'm just wondering whether that conference gave you an adequate opportunity to make your points and to
I think it was okay. Yeah, it worked okay. I mean, I've never been to one in person, so I'm sure it's better to be sitting around the table. And maybe we could have actually talked more to the water company. I don't know how to compare them.
I would be curious how they run the actual public hearing to let people be able to ask their questions. And the example, I'll try to say this quickly, but you remember the hearing or the meeting, wasn't a hearing, the meeting that was held on the Cannondale well fields.
Mm-hmm.
That was very well attended.
Yeah.
And there was an impression made on the applicant about the interest of the public. The similar meeting that was recently held for the Hemlocks Reservoir diversion project, it didn't have the same effect at all.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a bunch of people that were, on the call, and at the end, they were given an opportunity for 2 or 3 minutes, I think 3 minutes, to ask questions.
Yeah.
But there was no effort to answer the questions at the meeting, and it was much different. I'd be curious to see how they do the public hearings. All right.
Also,
thank you.
though, I think the public hearings themselves have a very rigid, I mean, I don't know that much about it, but have a very rigid set of how things proceed. whether it's in person or on Zoom. I mean, the public
Right.
meeting is a better place to be able to really air things. Like, I'm not sure the public is even allowed to comment. I think what you're allowed to do is
Oh,
comment.
yes, they are. No, the
At
public,
public
the normal way of doing it in person is people get up at the podium and they make their statements.
at the hearing.
And at the hearing, and they're recorded as part of the hearing.
Okay, so hopefully they do get to do that.
Yeah,
I am learning as I go.
yes.
We all are. Anything else for Louise? Okay. Dick, prior to our conversation today, I was worrying about the dead menhaden in the Norwalk River because they were there for about the last 2.5, 3 weeks up until earlier this week. You said you've been out sampling and the DOs have been good?
Bad. The highlight of the summer was on 813 up at Wall Street. The surface was at 1 part per million, and then it dropped off to 0.35 and below all the way down.
So
And
that explains,
that same pattern was picked up at the I-95 bridge. Temperatures at Wall Street, 78.8, 79 at the Wall Street at the bridge, and 80 at the sewage treatment plant. Water temperature.
so that explains the dead menhaden.
Certainly would help.
Yep. Yep.
That was the worst summer we've seen in quite a while.
Wow.
And unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it, sadly.
Oh,
Okay. Anything else anybody wanted to put out there today?
Just a question for Dick. Why is it so low? Is it less fresh water coming in or less flushing, or what's your opinion?
rainfall for starting from May through August this year was a little bit under 11 inches. Last year it was 25 inches, to give you an example. So we have a really dry system. Many of the small creeks have dried up and flow is down, and all that plus high temperatures, high atmospheric temperatures have really done a number on it. Poor flushing on top of that.
And Chris, once the water temperatures start getting above 70 degrees, that's when the dissolved oxygen tanks. And the temperatures Dick was just citing earlier, it's not very hopeful for a lot of the active fish that require a high oxygen demand.
The harbor is recovering now. It's coming back.
Can I ask a question? I mean, Dick, do you think that if in 2029, when we hopefully get these stream flow regulations come into effect and we have the minimum stream flows that we don't currently have, like in the Silver Mine, the Comstock Brook, and do you see, even though those are going to be probably still small, is that the kind of thing that could make a difference in a situation like this, where you had river flowing through this whole dry summer? You know, like the Comstock Brook, Belden Hill Brook, I can tell you they're all dry right now.
Sure.
But they won't be if water companies have to comply in 2029. Do you think that would make a difference?
It certainly could help, but the problem is we have to look at air temperature as well. And you know, that's the problem that seems to be getting higher as we go along.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst summers we've had.
Yeah, the heat wave, the combo.
Yep.
Okay.
I will say this, I monitor 6 other harbors and they all came through rather well. The bacteria counts are down close to zip everywhere because of the weather.
Hey, you don't have storm sewers running off.
Don't have what?
Storm sewers.
Do
Right.
you do any nitrate monitoring, any nitrogen or
Nope.
chlorophyll? No.
Oxygen, salinity, temperature, chlorophyll, and bacteria.
Okay. So how does the chlorophyll correspond to this?
Don't know yet until all the tests get developed. They're all in the freezer.
Mhm. Well, it seems like the solution is to reduce nitrogen inputs upstream, and septic systems are usually identified as one of the biggest sources, other than what falls from the sky. Fertilizers, of course, too.
We have another little problem too. The bottom fish, I'm not talking about bunker and every the rest of it. The bottom fish are in terrible shape. Harbor Watch has been going out trawling, and each time they've come back with one fish the last 2 weeks. That's totally off the scale.
Chris, the nitrogen from the septic systems, I just had this long 2.5-hour meeting with the second taxing district, and their recommendation when they visit people who live in the watershed, their recommendation is to have the sewage, their sewage tanks pumped every 3 to 5 years. Do you think that seems like a long time to me. I don't know do you think, oh, you're muted again. You're muted.
Me?
Chris, you're muted.
I don't think it's going to make that much difference if you pump much more frequently. The problem is the septic systems really don't filter out nitrogen. So,
Okay, right. That's the change they made on Long Island, is the ones that do that. Is that?
yeah, there are ways to engineer to put more carbon into the system using carbon, one form or another, whether it's wood chips in the leaching field or other permeable reactive barriers where you have real bad problems. So,
Louise,
Silver Hill did a wood chip installation on their septic systems above and beyond what was required. So we need more people doing that kind of work, I think.
Who did that? Silver Hill?
Silver Hill Hospital, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
right, on
wow.
the silver mine. So can we watch that and see if the nitrogen levels go down? Are we looking at that?
That's an idea. I'll bring that up to Chris Bellucci and see if there, Dick, Sarah Harbor Watch might be another one who might be able to do some monitoring there.
I mean, it would be great if we have this little example, this experiment, and we could see that it made a difference.
I agree.
Can Sarah monitor nitrogen?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Now she can collect the samples. I don't know if she can process them.
Oh, she can collect the samples. Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'll ask her.
She may already be monitoring nitrogen. I don't have her data for this year, but she's got one more year in the Norwalk that we're funding.
When did Silver Hill put that in?
Very recently. I don't know exactly, but
Recent.
yeah.
Okay.
Louise, a
That's
few
cool.
years back, the Norwalk River Watershed Initiative had many discussions over how often septic tanks should be emptied out. And the bottom line is it amounted to how many people live in the house, how much water they use, how
Yeah.
big are the tanks, and how old are the tanks.
Exactly. How old they are, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And to come up with a set, they should be emptied every 2 years, every 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. Bottom line was they didn't feel comfortable making a recommendation other than it should be examined every 5 years.
Okay.
But
That
that's up to the communities to do that.
Right. Okay.
At one point, they were going to try to survey the pumpers and find out how often these homes have been done. I don't know where that went.
Yeah, that's not in place. That would have,
Correct.
yeah.
They
Correct.
may be reporting to the local health districts too, the pumpers. So those records might be available.
Do they report do they?
You'd have to ask the local health department.
No, they don't, Louise.
They
No.
don't. I didn't think so. Okay.
No.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, Joe.
Yep.
You brought up another topic that we haven't discussed for several months, and that's the future of the Norwalk River Watershed Initiative. I mean,
Yep.
that was one of the goals of the Harbor Commission, or priorities, to try to reestablish that this year. And of course, that's been difficult in these difficult times, but has there been any consideration to trying to organize a remote meeting of the Watershed Initiative, especially since, that we have that issue that Louise is talking about with the public hearing for the dam? Would it be of value to have the Watershed Initiative make a comment as part of that hearing? And to do that,
Okay.
would it be useful to have a meeting of interested parties?
I think you're right. I think it would be very useful. I'll contact Chris Sullivan. And
I would love to have the support of the initiative on
Right.
this.
But why can't we go to the watershed-based plan and just try to pull out some of the policies that might be relevant to proper, planning and restoration of stream flows and dams and so forth? There must be something in there that we could take as
Sure.
form a comment around.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Has anybody been in touch with Alexis Caracetti lately?
No.
Tom, or anybody? No.
No.
I put in a couple of calls. She hasn't gotten back to me recently, so.
Maybe we could just email her and Chris and ask for a Zoom meeting because of this upcoming public hearing on September 29th.
when was the last meeting?
We were supposed to have one in August, I think. And so the one before that was probably June. Well, what? We haven't met. Yeah, I don't know.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, we haven't met in ages, right?
No, we had a reorganization meeting that was where all the participants talked about their interest in the watershed and the history of the initiative, and then the understanding was that there would be and then the
It
COVID
was
stuff
COVID.
happened.
Yeah, it's COVID.
Weren't there 2 meetings? I thought there was a second meeting too.
Yeah, we had 2 or 3 meetings, I think. At least 2.
Yeah, I have to go back and look, but
There was more.
remember
than-
bringing the
And we had
easels
one
and the display
scheduled.
boards and yeah.
I think we can get back on. We can do it on Zoom. Maybe it's,
Excellent. Okay. Reading and approval of minutes from June 7th. That's how long it's been. So I think I included that. Tom did a nice, quick job.
Actually, Joe, those minutes were from July 2nd.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now.
Just missed one meeting.
Any comments or suggestions for changes in the minutes?
no.
Should be on the 3rd page of what I sent you all. Okay, and finally, do we have someone who can move to approve the minutes?
I got it, Joe, yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The next meeting, I think, is October 1st.
Hmm.
If everything goes well.
Yep. Let's plan for it all going well.
Okay, this went
So-
quickly.
Yeah, I don't believe that I'll be able to make it to that meeting, but you can send me an email and I'll respond the week after that,
Okay,
if there's anything.
thanks, Chris.
And-
Sure.
And Tom, could you send me the link to the shellfish meeting? I didn't get that. It's Jeff.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Larry,
Tom.
are you on this call?
Yes,
Could we send one more invite out for the next meeting?
sure.
It's to Jeff Stedman, who was on this call.
Okay,
Yeah, we
I-
need him. We need the Zoom link for the shellfish meeting.
all right, I will do that.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay well, you all.
Yes.
All right, have a
Bye.
good night.
Well,
Take care.
Bye.
Okay.
aye.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.
Night.